Which is worse? Knowing that we are alone in the universe, or discovering that we are not? Science Fiction Season. Radio 4 Curious Minds. BBC Radio 4.
Tonight's episode of BBC 4 addresses Milan Kundera's Unbearable Lightness of Being. It will be presented by Jamal Jarrett and features such experts as Professor Areeb of Kundera Academy, fellow Dylan Mansfield of Cambridge, and Professor Pieter TheGreat of Yale. This was all recorded in the London studios of BBC. Please enjoy. What our significance is to life as a whole has remained a pondering question throughout the existence of humanity. Friedrich Nietzsche offered a philosophical insight. Life is insignificant, it is only experienced once. Should you live infinity, each choice is weighed with a lifelong burden. The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera is a novel based on this idea. The lightness of being insignificant, or the heaviness of meaning. Here to help us talk about this novel is Professor Areeb of Kundera Academy of Prague, fellow Dylan Mansfield of Cambridge University, and Professor Pieter TheGreat of Yale, USA. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming all the way down here today. So, what is your general belief on the philosophical base behind the book, professors?
Well, the main philosophical basis of this novel is this idea of duality between lightness and weight, body and soul, and so on, which is explored through the different characters.
Duality is a concept which has been present in philosophy since ancient Greece. The main crux of duality is differentiating between mind and matter. Many of Kundera's characters display a similar conflict, not being able to differentiate between the two, and rightly so.
Yes, this idea is definitely found in the four main characters of the novel, obviously referring to Thomas and Teresa, Sabina, and Franz. I personally found their characteristic traits very useful in understanding Nietzsche's ideas of lightness and weight.
Kundera begins the novel by posing a philosophical question that dates back to Parmenides. Which is more positive quality, lightness or weight? What do you think of Kundera's answers? Do you have your own, professors?
Kundera has created an interesting interplay between lightness and weight, and even though it seems that Kundera is biased, we come to learn of the cons of each philosophy through the interactions of the protagonists. There is a paradoxical effect to this, though. Every time one idea seems better, the moment it is adopted, the other option is superior.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Thomas especially shows this. He explains his difficulty to choose to devote himself to Teresa or not, because every time he accepts a meaning relationship, he wants the lightness, the no meaning. Whenever he has no meaning, he starts to crave it.
Yes, and he also plays with the characters and the reader by using symbols and metaphors that are interpreted in wildly different ways. For instance, Sabina's bowler hat, which is imbued with meaning by Tomasz, but is totally misunderstood by Franz. Kundera breaks down the divide between these dualities, between meaning and meaninglessness. In that way, this novel is really a paragon of postmodernism.
Ah, yes. On the subject of Sabina's relationships with Thomas and Franz, despite the contrasting elements of the two, they are both indeed what Thomas would call an erotic relationship. Kundera mentions these a lot in the novel and seem to be linked with Thomas's use of lightness and freedom. But I'm sure many of the readers are wondering, is this morally acceptable?
The question of ethics and this idea of erotic relationships relates back to the concept of lightness, no meaning. The hedonistic approach to life that Thomas holds is really the flaw behind giving no meaning to anything. We all can see the repercussions of this in Teresa, who's literally tortured by Thomas's erotic relationship throughout the novel.
Well, actually, I think that in addition, once again, Kundera takes the postmodern route here in allowing the reader's ethical code to determine the moral message of this novel.
Wait, I would like to continue on this idea of a tortured Teresa. To all those who have read the book, Teresa obviously is in pain from these erotic relationships. How do you think the dreams emphasize this?
Her erotic relationship with Tomas and his infidelity has caused her a lot of psychological pain. It has created a deep-rooted fear of all women in her. She thinks of them as potential competitors for her love for Tomas. The dream with the naked women going in a circle of a pool of carcasses with Tomas, shooting them one by one, is a prime example of the sort of competition she's afraid of.
Yes, another important feature of her dream also contains how Teresa feels objectified by Thomas. How she feels more like a body than a soul because of his erotic relationships with others. This once again links back to the idea of duality. However, I also think that the dreams and her fears work well with her past. I believe that her mother is the source of Teresa's self-destructive need.
Yes, and despite her attempts to escape her past, Teresa continues the vicious cycle by marrying Thomas, by giving him her life, symbolized at the beginning of the
Well,
novel by her
professors,
suitcase.
do you believe this novel has any historical context to it? Is there a relation between the Prague Spring and the philosophical base?
I personally see the history of Czechoslovakia as more of a base to the setting and nothing more. It just adds context to the story and that's it.
Well, actually, I have to disagree with Mr. the Great. I believe that it actually does explore another duality, that of oppression and freedom, by setting this novel in a Eastern Bloc country in the midst of the Cold War.
Well, gentlemen, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for coming and explaining your professional opinions. To our audience, tomorrow at 9:30 AM and PM, we'll be discussing Ibsen's novel Hedda Gabler. Thank you, and for now, enjoy the Archers.